They told you love was the key. Love harder, stay soft, forgive fast. If you give endlessly, they said you'll be safe. You'll be respected. You'll be seen. But Machiavelli never believed that for a second. To him, love wasn't armor. It was a hole in it. It wasn't a gift. It was an opening. A man who leans on love for protection is already exposed, because love makes you stop looking. Love makes you explain what shouldn't be excused. And in a world built on leverage, that's fatal. You think loving your partner, deeply trusting your friends, blindly standing by family without question, that makes you noble. But that's not how power works. That's how people get played. You stop noticing what they take from you because you care too much about how they feel. You let things slide. You downplay what hurt. And why? Because you assume that love guarantees safety, that the people who love you can't possibly turn against you. Machiavelli would laugh at that. He knew that betrayal almost never comes from enemies. It comes from familiarity, from the people closest to you, the ones who know your weaknesses, your patterns, your soft spots. Enemies don't have access, but your inner circle, they expect access. They expect explanations. They expect to get away with things no one else would dare attempt. Not because they're evil, but because they've stopped fearing consequence. You forgive faster than you should. You explain when you should stay silent. You give the benefit of the doubt when the doubt should be a warning. Over time, people stop thanking you for your loyalty. They just start expecting it. That's what happens when you lead with love. It gets taken for granted, and then it gets used. Machiavelli didn't tell people to stop loving. He wasn't a monster. But he did say this: love with a ceiling, love with a cost, love with a plan. Because if your love is limitless, then so is your exposure. And when you're emotionally exposed, you are at your most vulnerable. Not to attack, but to manipulation. Being cold-blooded doesn't mean being cruel. It means being conscious. Conscious of how proximity changes people. Conscious of how predictable behavior gets turned into leverage. Conscious of how fast I love you becomes you owe me. It means knowing that if you're not careful, your love can become a leash. A leash other people pull when they want you to move, shut up, forgive, or sacrifice yourself. It's not about removing your heart. It's about protecting it. If people know you'll always say yes, they'll stop asking. If they know you'll always return, they'll stop valuing your absence. And if they know your love will override your logic, then they'll never fear losing you. Fear isn't a bad thing. Fear is respect's older brother. Without a little fear, people start pushing. They test how far they can go. They stop checking in and start showing up when it suits them. And when you finally pull back, they don't feel guilty. They feel entitled. They feel offended that you changed the rules of a game they thought they were winning. That's why you need boundaries that bite. Not just walls, but consequences. If someone's used to your warmth, show them your absence. If someone crosses your line, remove their access, not with rage, but with silence. Because your silence is powerful. It forces people to sit with the cost of losing you. Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." And it's not about scaring people, it's about not being easy to manipulate. You don't give away your loyalty. You lend it. And only to those who show they can handle it without using it as a shield for bad behavior. This is where it starts, with 5 tests, subtle, quiet, but revealing. Test 1: entitlement. They stop thanking you. They stop asking. They start assuming you'll always be there, always help, always say yes. And when you don't, suddenly you're selfish. You've changed. You're cold. But the truth is, they just lost their unearned privilege. Test 2: guilt. You say no, and they bring up everything you've ever done together. You set a boundary, and they cry. You pull back and they call you distant. They're not trying to connect. They're trying to manipulate. If you reverse your decision because you feel bad, they'll remember that. And they'll use it again. Test 3: the loyalty loop. You've been consistent, loyal, generous, but they stop matching it. And yet the second you stop being that way, panic. Not because they love you, but because their emotional insurance policy just expired. Test 4: just this once. That little phrase is a gateway drug. Can you help me just this once? Can you make an exception? But when you do, it's never just once. It's a new standard. Now you bend, and they know you'll break next. Test 5: You're too harsh. You speak up and you're cold. You set space and now you're heartless. What they really mean is, you're not who I can control anymore. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. People will say you've changed, that you're distant. But Machiavelli would tell you, don't explain, don't debate, let them feel the difference. Because the man who fears being called cold ends up surrounded by people who love how easy he is to hurt. You don't stop loving. You start loving with precision, boundaries sharp enough to cut, access that must be earned, not assumed. Because once your love is unconditional, your pain becomes that too. So let them talk, let them mourn the version of you they could manipulate. That version is gone. What's left is someone they can no longer use. You feel the shift when you decide not to play their game anymore. One moment everything's familiar, the same routines, the soft words, the unspoken allowances, and then you stop bending, you stop explaining, you stop forgiving without reform. And suddenly the air changes. That's the moment your boundaries start doing their work. They become invisible walls that let warmth in, but only when you choose to lower them. Rule 1. Never explain your emotional distance. Silence is your strongest statement. When someone asks why you're acting differently, you don't justify, argue, or unpack your feelings. You say, I've recalibrated, and leave it at that. No conversation, no emotional bleed, because every explanation is ammunition. Every justification is an invitation to negotiate. You think a heart-to-heart might heal old wounds, but all it does is hand over the map to the scars they once pressed. Instead, use silence to test who's really paying attention to your needs and who's only focused on their comfort. Rule 2. Set consequences, not conditions. Most people beg for better behavior. Please don't raise your voice, or I'll be upset if you ignore me. Machiavelli's way is surgical. You show them what happens when they cross the line. You disappear, you withdraw. You remove privileges without complaint. When they panic and reach out, you show up on terms you decide. You don't ask for an apology. You make disrespect costly. If they respect you, they'll meet your boundary. If not, they'll learn you're not a safety net. Rule 3. Never negotiate through emotion. Emotions are the currency of manipulation. If someone knows tears will make you cave, they'll bring waterworks. If they know your guilt threshold, they'll push. So you refuse to bargain? You don't send long texts explaining your hurt. You don't revisit the past when the present is uncomfortable. Instead, you maintain emotional clarity as a shield. You respond with firmness, not frenzy. You let your stillness speak louder than any outburst could. Rule 4. Define what you tolerate and never wobble. Indecision is weakness disguised as compassion. If your boundaries shift depending on who's asking, you become a flexible target. So you make them black and white. I don't respond to yelling, or I don't engage in drama-based excuses. Then you follow through without exception. People test what's flexible. They respect what's fixed. When you enforce your rules with consistency, you earn a reputation for reliability, and that reputation is your real power. Rule 5. Don't fear being seen as harsh. Society tells you endless patience is a virtue, but Machiavelli would call that complacency. When you enforce a boundary, they'll call you cold, callous, or heartless. Let them. They're mourning the loss of their advantage. You're not cruel. You're uncompromising. Your cold-blooded strategy is an emotional disconnection. It's emotional intelligence. You don't lack warmth. You choose precisely when to offer it. That choice terrifies people more than any outburst or threat ever could. These rules aren't abstract tactics. They're practices you weave into your daily life. They become rituals that reinforce your position. Habit 1. Move without announcement. You don't warn them you're done. You don't write a manifesto about why you need space. You simply respond slower, speak less, and cease the habitual over-explanations. Your consistency writes the boundary in steel. No grand speeches required. Habit 2. Stay polite, never overfamiliar. Politeness is a way to control intimacy. You greet with composure, you compliment with intention, you exit while they still respect your presence. Familiarity is the opening they slip through. Precision is the code they can't crack. Habit 3. Reflect before reacting. When disappointment strikes you, catalog it rather than lash out. When someone crosses your line, you observe instead of escalating. That pause is your advantage. While they spiral, you assess. While they bargain, you stand firm. Your stillness becomes their greatest intimidation. Habit 4. Never reopen what you've closed without requalification. If a friendship, partnership, or habit ends, it stays ended until conditions change. Time alone doesn't heal betrayal, standards do. If they want access again, they must earn it. No exceptions. Habit 5. Treat your peace as a private strategy. You don't post about your boundaries on social media. You don't make a show of your emotional maturity. You live quietly. You protect deeply. You let the strength of your self-control speak in the spaces where others only hear silence. At first, these habits feel unnatural. You'll flinch at your own firmness. You'll worry you're losing your softness. But remember, this isn't about erasing your heart. It's about defending it. You still care, still connect, still build meaning, but only within the parameters you set. That is true freedom. Because unguarded love becomes unearned pain. Unconditional giving becomes silent self-erasure. You might ask, how do I reset after enforcing these rules? How do I reintroduce warmth without lowering the walls too far? The answer is in controlled presence. You don't flood back into their lives. You re-engage with intention briefly, clearly on your timetable. You speak with purpose. You exit while still remembered, still respected. That echo of your absence is your final leverage. This is Machiavellian empathy in action, strategic, conditional, unwavering. It's not cruelty. It's command. It's emotional stewardship, knowing when to contract and when to expand. And once you master it, you realize that power isn't about dominating others. It's about owning yourself. Now, as you integrate these rules and habits, notice the change. Relationships that drain you fade away. Relationships that respect your boundaries deepen. Your emotional center becomes a fortress rather than a battlefield. You aren't at the mercy of others' needs. You choose whose needs deserve your energy. And through it all, you love. You connect. You build and nurture. But always behind that love stands a wall. A wall not of hate, but of hope. A hope that you can be both compassionate and secure. Because the most dangerous vulnerability is unexamined love. The most potent strength is conscious care. As you end this part of the journey, reflect which of these rules feels most challenging, which is most vital. Begin practicing today. Silence the urge to explain. Define one boundary. Hold it, and watch how your world shifts. By now, you've laid the groundwork: silence over explanations, walls over open fields, and rituals that remind both you and others where you stand. But Machiavelli's strategy doesn't end with defense. It evolves into an intentional blueprint for engagement. Because once you've mastered the art of controlled absence, the next step is mastering controlled presence. Controlled presence means you choose the timing, duration, and tenor of your involvement. It's not enough to build walls. You also need gates that open on your terms. You show up when it amplifies your influence and withdraw when it solidifies respect. Think of it like a performance. You never want to overstay your welcome. You want to be remembered as impactful, not overwhelming. Here's how you create that dynamic. First, define your social calendar. That doesn't mean scheduling every dinner party. Just be deliberate about your availability. If a friend or family member reaches out, don't always respond immediately. Respond when it aligns with your priorities. When you do show up, be fully there, listen actively, engage sincerely, contribute meaningfully. Then leave. Your exit should feel like a punctuation mark, not a runaway sentence. Second, sculpt your conversations with precision. When you speak, speak with intention. No rambling monologues or emotional pouring. Use concise language. Choose your words like chess moves. An academic-style phrase can underscore your authority. Research on social reciprocity confirms that those who overextend emotional credit often face exploitation. Philosophers still debate whether total transparency ever yields genuine intimacy. But your strategic partial reveal ensures you stay in the driver's seat. Inject modern references, maybe a nod to how influencers guard their personal lives on social media, revealing curated snippets rather than raw footage. That concreteness keeps your audience grounded in reality and reinforces your message. Third, deploy selective warmth. This is where strategic empathy shines. You offer your heart like a rare currency valuable precisely because it's limited. When you share vulnerability, make sure it's with someone who has consistently shown they reciprocate. If they haven't, don't take the bait. Remember the crocodile-scented sunscreen from your vacation? That small, quirky detail symbolized how even the sweetest memories can harbor unseen threats. Awe-inspiring moments are precious, but they don't excuse thoughtless behavior. You reminisce, you laugh, you connect, but only after you confirm that gatekeepers of your warmth have passed the entitlement test. Fourth practice, the pause and pivot. When an emotional trigger hits, don't recoil or retaliate. Pause. Pivot. Transform the moment into a lesson rather than a confrontation. Let's say a loved one lashes out unfairly. Your instinct might be to defend or withdraw entirely. Instead, pause your reaction. Pivot to curiosity. What's happening beneath this anger? Then mentally catalog the behavior. Does this person consistently respect your boundaries, or is this another loyalty loop coming to an end? This academic-style analysis prevents you from turning personal slights into personal wounds. It's thinking like an observer in a psychology lab, not an actor in a soap opera. Fifth, establish the ritual of requalification. Anyone who lost access to your emotional landscape must earn entry again. But requalification isn't a one-time exam. It's an ongoing process. Set clear criteria. Maybe it's consistent acknowledgement of your boundaries for 30 days. Maybe it's a specific act of contrition. Maybe it's a shift in reciprocal behavior. Whatever it is, make it concrete. Write it down if you have to. Then measure their progress. If they meet the standard, you re-engage. If not, you let the gate remain closed. This prevents regression. People know that forgiveness without requalification is a revolving door to exploitation. Applying these tactics might feel transactional at first, but it's transactional with yourself, not with others. It's about self-valuation. When you embed these principles, you'll notice immediate shifts. You feel more in control of your emotions. You stop overgiving in the hope of earning love. You realize love is already there, but it thrives within boundaries. You stop over-explaining because you no longer need approval. You stop over-living for others' expectations because you've internalized your own. Realize that being cold-blooded in this Machiavellian sense isn't about lack of warmth. It's about calibrated warmth, a thermostat you adjust based on evidence. If a friend consistently shows up only when they need you, you dial down the temperature. If they step up, you dial it back up. That control over emotional climate is precisely what keeps relationships healthy. Too much heat and you burn out. Too much chill and you freeze out potential allies. The sweet spot lies in strategic empathy. Remember the guilt reflex test. You're not immune to it. When someone deploys emotional triggers, after all I've done for you, you might feel a pang of regret, but now you have a toolbox recognition. This is guilt, play reflection. Have they respected prior boundaries, resolution? I maintain my stance. That mental checklist is your shield. When you use it, you neutralize manipulation before it takes root. It also helps to reframe conflict as data. Every slight, every boundary pushback, every loyalty lapse, these are signals. They tell you who values you and who values the version of you that offered no resistance. Use them as data points to guide where you invest your time and energy. This shifts your mindset from emotional reaction to strategic analysis. You go from ouch, they hurt me to interesting, they just revealed their true colors. Let's circle back to Machiavelli's own life. Unlike the paranoid ruler locked in his fortress, he was precise. He wasn't motivated by fear of betrayal alone. He was motivated by the desire for position. He built filters, not walls. Filters allowed him to test who was worthy of trust, who could prove loyalty without turning it into leverage. And those who passed through, they operated under clear known standards. They knew that Machiavelli's warmth was conditional, but they also knew that it was genuine when granted. You can do the same. Start by auditing one relationship. Pick someone you've recently lapsed from. How many of these tests have they failed? Entitlement, guilt, reflex, loyalty loop. If you decide they need requalification, set a simple, measurable task. It could be as small as a sincere apology in writing, or as significant as sustained boundary-respecting behavior over a month. Let them prove themselves. And if they do, you'll know it matters because it wasn't free. This mindset shift also clarifies your broader social network. You'll see certain connections dissolve, but that's a feature, not a bug. Relationships that thrive under conditional warmth are your true alliances. They're lean, reliable, and resilient. They're the ones that return value, rather than just extracting it. And they're the relationships that ultimately reward the cold-blooded strategist within you. By now, you've integrated silence consequences, emotional shields, fixed boundaries, controlled presence, selective warmth, pause and pivot requalification rituals, and data-driven conflict analysis. These are the pillars of Machiavellian emotional mastery. They won't always feel easy. Some days they'll feel lonely or harsh. But they're not about punishing others. They're about preserving your integrity and your power. And power in this context isn't about domination. It's about autonomy, being the author of your emotional story. It's about having a choice in how you invest your care, your kindness, your empathy. It's about making sure that what you give willingly and wisely. No more unconscious emotional bleeding. No more silent sacrifices that go unacknowledged. Take a moment now and breathe. Reflect on one rule or habit you haven't yet implemented. Commit to practicing it today. Maybe it's setting consequences instead of conditions. Maybe it's practicing the pause and pivot the next time guilt arises. Or perhaps it's sending that concise, boundary-based text instead of a long explanation. Whatever you choose, do it with intention. And notice how it ripples through your relationships. Because this path isn't a one-time shift, it's a lifelong practice. Machiavellian empathy isn't a checkbox. It's an evolving skill set. You'll refine it over interactions, learn from missteps, and strengthen with each test. Over time, you become that person no one can manipulate, but everyone still wants close. That is true cold-blooded mastery warmth. That's valuable boundaries. That a respected presence that's impactful, and absence that's meaningful. That's how you transform love from liability into leverage, from exposure into empowerment. You've practiced building filters and measuring warmth, but real mastery comes when you integrate strategic rituals into your daily life. Think of these as emotional micro-habits, small actions that reinforce the architecture you've established. Habit 1. The morning audit. When you wake up, before you check your phone or dive into emails, take 90 seconds to mentally scan your relationships. Who texted you late last night asking for a favor? Who slid back into your DMs only when they needed advice? Jot down the names. That tiny act of awareness primes you to treat each interaction as a choice, rather than a reflex. It's like reviewing your portfolio before a big trade. Professional traders don't wing it, and neither should you. Habit 2. The digital disconnect. Notice how you reflexively scroll through social media before bed, offering your attention as if it's free. That's a giveaway. Instead, schedule a 30-minute disconnect window each evening. When the clock strikes, put your phone on airplane mode. Let the silence remind you that your presence online or off is a limited resource. Philosophers still debate whether technology has improved human connection, but you already know that connection without boundaries leads to burnout. This nightly ritual preserves your emotional capital and teaches others that your time, and by extension, your care, is valuable. Habit 3. Selective scheduling. You keep a packed calendar not because you have to, but because it signals utility. When someone asks to meet, invite them to book time just like consultants do. You could jokingly call it your exec office hours. It might feel odd to treat personal relationships like client appointments, but in practice, you're simply formalizing respect for your schedule. A quirky observation: think of yourself as a boutique coffee shop with limited seating. People will value that seat more when they see it's rarely available. Habit 4. The post-interaction debrief. After any emotionally charged conversation, whether it's a text fight about who's doing the dishes or an intense work critique, take 2 minutes to journal. Note what boundary was tested. Entitlement loyalty loop, guilt reflex, rate each on a scale of 1 to 5. Scientific research in behavioral psychology shows that reflection reinforces learning loops faster than passive experience. So this quick analysis trains your brain to spot manipulation before it escalates. Plus, it's an excuse to buy a tasteful journal you'll actually enjoy using. Habit 5. The micro timeout. When someone pushes you, maybe they guilt you for not volunteering extra at a community fundraiser, or they demand free advice on SEO for their side hustle, excuse yourself for 30 seconds. Stand up, stretch, take a quick walk to the kitchen, then return. That physical break creates emotional distance. Neuroscientists still debate the exact benefits of movement breaks, but you already feel that returning with calmness resets the tone far more effectively than an immediate defense. And if they ask where you went, you simply smile and say, "I needed a quick reset." End of story. By layering these micro habits over your core rules, you build a lifestyle that's both adaptable and anchored. You move through your day with intention, not reaction. And as your confidence grows, you'll notice the subtle shift. People start mirroring your boundaries. They adjust their tone, treat your time more respectfully, and sometimes even comment, "Wow, you're so composed these days." You resist the urge to explain, because calibration, not justification, is your priority. Let's address a common fear. If I enforce these boundaries, will I end up alone? The short answer: only if you're already surrounded by fair-weather friends. Real connections thrive under mutual respect. It's like a garden. Plants need fencing to keep deer out, but inside that fence they flourish. Without a fence, the garden is devoured. If your relationships can't survive basic boundaries such as returning texts within a reasonable time frame or respecting your do not disturb hours, then they weren't relationships worth nurturing. Another fear. What if I actually hurt someone's feelings? Yes, there will be discomfort. Your boundary might sting their entitlement. But here's a thought-provoking paradox. People often appreciate honesty more than indefinite tolerance. A survey of workplace dynamics found that clear communication, however uncomfortable, builds long-term trust more effectively than vague reassurance. When you say, "I can't help you on Sunday," you give others a chance to plan around your availability. That's compassion wrapped in precision. It's a gift, not a punishment. And a light joke: imagine someone demands your help again and you respond with, "My lawyers will have to check their calendars." The absurdity catches them off guard, and sometimes humor is the best way to underscore a serious boundary. Just make sure your delivery is dry enough that they know you're not joking about the principle. Now keep in mind, an academic-style phrase, emotional hedging without strategic calibration, often leads to asymmetric exploitation in social exchanges. Translation: if you hedge your feelings, keeping your heart just slightly open without strategically calibrating boundaries, you become an easy target for one-sided relationships. As you refine these habits, document your progress. You might use a simple spreadsheet titled Boundary Performance Tracker. Columns could include date, relationship, boundary tested, response outcome, and next steps. Treat it like a personal case study in human behavior. It's empowering to see patterns emerge. Perhaps your oldest friend consistently triggers the loyalty loop, or maybe your sibling rarely respects your digital disconnect. With data, you make informed decisions rather than relying on emotional impulses. Finally, integrate a quarterly emotional retreat. Once every 3 months, carve out half a day, no devices, no meetings, to review your boundary tracker, adjust your rituals, and set new emotional goals. Maybe you decide to extend your digital disconnect window or introduce a new rule: no emotional negotiations after 8 p.m. This periodic check-in mirrors the strategic retreat of successful entrepreneurs who pause to pivot. Philosophers still debate the optimal frequency of introspection, but scheduled reflection beats sporadic crisis mode thinking every time. Through these frameworks, you transform from someone who gives love indiscriminately into someone who gives it intentionally. You learn that strategic empathy isn't an oxymoron. It's the art of maintaining warmth without sacrificing stability. You'll still laugh at movies, cry at poignant commercials, and share genuine moments with trusted people. But you'll do it on your terms. Look around. Relationships that once drained you now feel more balanced. Invitations you dread turn into opportunities you choose. You stop being everyone's emotional landfill and become a curator of selective intimacy. Others feel your boundaries, and often that gives them a blueprint for their own. In a strange twist, by protecting yourself, you teach people how to protect you. So as you close this part of the journey, identify 3 rituals you'll implement immediately. Maybe it's the morning audit, the digital disconnect, and the post-interaction debrief. Commit to them for 30 days and observe the effects. Track the changes in your energy levels, in the tone of your communications, and in the quality of your interactions. Remember, being cold-blooded isn't about building an emotional fortress that never opens. It's about constructing gates with intercom screens you can monitor. You decide who gets buzzed in. And when they do, they enter a space defined by respect, consistency, and intention. Practice these rituals, own your narrative, and watch as your world shifts from chaotic entitlement to intentional engagement. Because at its core, Machiavellian emotional mastery is not a denial of humanity. It's a declaration of self-worth. You've built your boundaries, practiced your rituals, and mapped your emotional landscape. Now it's time to anchor these strategies in the real world with finesse, adaptability, and a final layer of precision. Machiavellian mastery isn't static. It thrives on ongoing calibration. The final suite of tactics equips you to refine, adjust, and ultimately sustain your cold-blooded empathy as a permanent asset. First, embrace the emotional KPI framework. Just as businesses track key performance indicators, you'll track 3 metrics for each relationship: respect rate, reciprocity index, and boundary compliance. Respect rate measures how often your limits are honored. For instance, how frequently someone texts within your designated response window. Reciprocity index gauges the balance of give and take. Do they offer you emotional support when you need it? Boundary compliance tracks how consistently they cease boundary testing behaviors after reminders. Score each on a scale from 1 to 10 monthly. Then visualize the data in a simple line graph or table, because seeing trends helps you decide whether to deepen, maintain, or dial back a connection. Second, deploy strategic check-ins, brief planned conversations to reinforce your system. Schedule these sparingly, once a quarter with close friends, once every 6 months with family if needed. When you meet, start with a neutral prompt. I've been refining how I manage my energy and wanted your feedback. Frame it as collaborative rather than punitive. Share one boundary improvement you've made, ask if they've noticed, and invite suggestions. This ritual signals that you're not rigid for the sake of rigidity. You're evolving with intention. It also tests whether people can engage in emotional discourse without slipping into guilt games or entitlement loops. Third, adopt contextual buffering. Certain environments, family gatherings, high-stress work contexts, reunions can erode even the strongest practices. Prepare in advance by mentally rehearsing scenarios where your boundaries might be tested. For example, before a holiday dinner, remind yourself, I will not engage in political debates after the 3rd drink. If triggered, use a pre-planned signal. A simple text to a trusted friend or a note in your phone that prompts a micro timeout. This forethought prevents surprise reactions and keeps your emotional thermostat within safe parameters. Fourth, refine your exit strategies. Beyond individual relationships, there are contexts you must leave entirely: groups, online forums, toxic social events. Develop a clear protocol, a short script you know by heart. Thanks for having me. I need some downtime. And a rapid departure plan. Always have a prepaid ride or a self-reminder that your peace is paramount. Exits aren't failures, they're investments in self-preservation. Treat them as such with neither drama nor apology. Fifth, cultivate strategic openness. Complete seclusion is neither healthy nor sustainable. To avoid clouding into suspicion or isolation, designate a small circle, your inner 5, with whom you share low-risk vulnerability. These are people who consistently score high on your emotional KPIs. Share a short journal entry or a glimpse of your personal goals. This controlled intimacy nourishes your heart and reminds you why boundaries exist: to create space for genuine connection, not to transform life into an armor-plated existence. As you integrate these final tactics, you'll notice an overarching principle emerge. Your emotional ecosystem becomes self-regulating. The combination of KPIs, check-ins, buffering, exit strategies, and strategic openness creates feedback loops that continually optimize your relationships. Rather than reacting to crisis points, you anticipate them. Rather than patching leaks in the dam of your heart, you reinforce weak spots before the pressure builds. At this stage, you embody Machiavelli's paradox: cold-blooded in method, warm in intention. People feel the clarity of your presence more than ever. They know the cost of overstepping your boundaries, so they tread carefully. They also know the value of genuine reciprocity, so they invest. You stop being everyone's default confidant, the person they call when they need a free therapist or an open door. Instead, you become a sought-after ally worth the effort because your engagement is deliberate, measured, and meaningful. A modern reference to illustrate, consider how premium software platforms operate with tiered access. Free accounts offer limited features. Paid subscribers gain advanced tools. You aren't turning people away, you're simply shifting relationships from free tier to premium tier. Those who want unfettered access must subscribe through consistent respect and reciprocity. And yes, some users will drop off, but the remaining community is more engaged, committed, and mutually beneficial. Quirky observation. Imagine handing out exclusive backstage passes at a concert. Everyone can watch the performance from the lawn, but only a few walk behind the curtain. That's the essence of conditional warmth. Your backstage isn't a physical space. It's the realm of your deeper thoughts, your unscripted moments, the candid reflection you share only with your inner circle. The front lawn remains open, but the backstage experiences are rare and cherished. Philosophers have long debated whether true autonomy is possible within social networks. Social contract theories propose mutual obligations. Existentialists posit radical individual freedom. Your approach marries both. You assert your freedom through boundaries while honoring the social contract by offering conditional reciprocity. You become neither an isolated sovereign nor a sacrificial lamb. You become a sovereign of your own skin. The final, most critical test is long-term sustainability. All practices must withstand changing circumstances, new relationships, career transitions, life events. To ensure durability, schedule annual audits. On your birthday or another significant date, review your emotional KPI history. Revisit your strategic check-ins, refresh your contextual buffers, rehearse your exit strategies, and reassess your inner five. This annual ritual keeps you ahead of complacency and prevents gradual erosion of your standards. Light joke. Think of yourself as the exclusive owner of a rare vintage wine. It's meant to be savored, not gulped. Pour it only for those who appreciate its complexity, and they'll toast you for your discernment. Serve it to everyone, and it loses its value just like any resource in unlimited supply. Through this continual refinement, you complete the Machiavellian transformation, a cold-blooded strategist who wields empathy as a precision tool, not a blunt instrument. You've transmuted vulnerability into vantage. You've converted passion into power. And you've turned love from liability into leverage. Now, as you stand at the crossroads of practice and mastery, reflect on your journey. You began by recognizing love's hidden cost. You learned to set ceilings on your care, to withdraw silently, to enforce consequences without cruelty. You mastered daily rituals and final tactics that ensure your boundaries endure, and you've integrated data-driven insights to keep evolving. Your heart remains intact. Your relationships become richer. Your energy stays yours. And your influence grows not through manipulation, but through the clear, unwavering demonstration that your warmth is valuable, precious, and conditional. Carry these teachings forward. See yourself not as a victim of others' needs, but as the architect of your own emotional destiny. When you walk into a room or a conversation, people sense the calibration. They know they must earn their place. And in honoring your boundaries, they honor you. This is Machiavelli's gift reborn: strategic empathy in a modern world. You don't apologize for your boundaries because they're not barriers to humanity, they're gateways to genuine connection.